It's Josh from N&J. Today we're going to be talking about a little problem that not only my Indian Scout Bobber has, but it's a common problem across not only a lot of Indian Scout Bobbers, but a lot of like fuel injected motorcycles that are like new technology, I guess. I'm sure we'll throw in some footage, but basically when it gets cold, and when I consider cold, I would say sub like 35 degrees Fahrenheit and then below, the Indian Scout Bobber has a problem with starting. Oh, it wants to. When I first discovered this, I think it was like in the high 30s, low 40s, and I noticed that it took my bike like 4 or 5 cranks of the starter to kick over and run, and then it was running really high on the RPMs, and it was really cold. And then ever since then, the temperature's been dropping. I don't ride the bike right now because it's wintertime, but it still has a very, very tough time starting. So I came to the conclusion that it was one of 3 options. It was either the battery didn't have enough cold crank amperage to start the bike when it was cold. It was either because the starter was bad and the starter wasn't cranking it over, or it had something to do with the fuel-air mixture. I pretty quickly ruled out the starter. Every time I would hit the starter button, it would cycle through the full thing. It usually runs for like 10 to 15 seconds, and if it doesn't kick over, it cuts itself off. And it never stopped doing that. There was never just a click unless the battery was dead. So the starter I pretty much ruled out right away, and it was down to either the battery or the fuel-air mixture. So I thought it was the battery for a while, and I looked at the manual, which I actually don't have the physical copy, but I looked online, and I still have the stock battery in my bike. So theoretically, the battery that comes with the bike should be good enough as far as the cold crank amperage goes, that it should start the bike. However, if the bike's not really geared towards people that live in cold climates, then I guess maybe not. But I don't think it was the battery. And we tested another theory that I'll get into that kind of makes me think that it wasn't the battery, although I may invest in a different battery in the future. So the final of the 3 options was the mixture, the fuel-air mixture. So basically, start off with a couple definitions. So fuel-injected motor, there's no carburetor. The fuel goes from a fuel pump straight from the fuel tank, and it is directly injected into the cylinder. With an old carbureted motor, there's a part called the choke. And what the choke does is the choke will limit the amount of air coming into the carburetor. And so when it's low temperature out, if you turn the choke on, it basically makes the mixture more rich by more fuel, less air, and it's easier to start at cold temps. With modern fuel-injected motors, there's no choke on them. So essentially, the bike cannot differentiate when there's hot or cold air. And if you guys don't know, hot air is going to be less dense than cold air, which is more dense. So if the air is colder, your bike is going to run more lean. So when you're starting your bike and you don't have a choke, basically the air-fuel mixture is not changing at all. It's going to be the same amount of air mixed with the same amount of fuel. If the air is colder, it's going to be more lean, it's going to have a harder time starting. So to test this theory, we ran it without trying to like over prime the motor. We would just turn on the pump and start the bike and see how many times it took us to get it started. We actually lose a battery fast.
Yeah, I bet.
Oh, it's right there, dude. Oh, man. You got that on video?
Yeah.
The starter loves me.
Yeah, the starter's having a great day. It's so close, dude. It's that top cylinder. Just once in a while it fires.
Yeah. killed the battery. I would say, how many times do you think we hit the starter button? Like 15? We had to hook it up to a battery tender. We killed the battery because we were trying it so many times that we literally just drained the battery of any power. So pretty obvious that the battery would die because of the bike not starting. It wasn't a problem with the battery. So boom, battery's ruled out. Now we need to figure out why this is happening. So I did a little research on my own using my brain, and I saw somebody say if you hit the button to turn the fuel pump on, what it does is it primes the engine. It dumps a little bit of fuel in there, so when you hit the starter button and the cylinders start to go, there's fuel mixed in and it kind of primes it. It's supposed to help it start when it's colder out or just in general. So the thing said, try and hit the fuel pump on multiple times before you start the bike. And Nick filmed it. We'll probably put that footage in here in a second. I turned the fuel pump on, turned it off, on, off. I think I did it 4 times, and I pressed the starter button. It went all the way through, didn't start, never even fired. But I only turned it on and off twice. So I turned it on, off, on, hit the starter button, and it started the second time through like cycling. So the conclusion in my head is that there's not enough fuel in the mixture when it's super cold out. And to my knowledge, the only way to fix this problem, if you're going to ride your bike when it's cold or you want to go out and start it in the garage, you just got to prime it multiple times before you start it. It still probably isn't going to start up right away. I guess there could be some variables involved in our test, but it's actually might be colder today than it was the day I tried to ride it, and it still took less attempts by over priming it. It's like 30, it's like freezing right now. I think it's like 32. So one of the ways that I've seen that you can fix this is to prime the engine multiple times. So when you turn it on, what that's doing is that's turning on the fuel pump and it's priming the motor. So if you do that a few times, what it's doing is it's priming the engine more. It's putting more fuel into it. And supposedly that's supposed to help with the cold start. Seem like it's working that well. So if you want a quicker, easier way, but more expensive way to fix this, I personally do not have a tuner on my bike yet. I need to get one because of the exhaust, and I'm going to be doing hopefully an air filter in the future. But if you have like a dyno jet, like a Power Vision or a Power Commander or a fuel pack, anything like that, and you add just the base tune to it, supposedly what I've seen on forums and what I've heard is that it makes it so it dumps more fuel when an engine's colder and it fires right up like it would in the summertime. So if you guys are really interested in something like that and you don't want it to keep having this weird non-start issue, you guys can go ahead and invest in some sort of tuner pack. That's probably something I'm going to do this summer. But for now, I'm just going to have to suck it up and do my little cycle the fuel pump thing. But other than that, it doesn't sound like there's a real solid way to fix this. It's just kind of how the bike is designed. I know a bike like Nick's Harley doesn't have this problem. We haven't really dove too much into why that is and why my bike. Our bikes are completely different technology. Mine has overhead cams. His has push rods. You know, all these different things could play a factor. It might have a completely different fuel injection system. I'm sure it does because they're 2 different brands. It could be just designed a little bit different, but whatever the difference is, Nick's bike, no matter how cold it is, will start in the cold weather, and mine has a problem. So, you know, not really sure why, but that's there. So it's definitely something to keep in mind if you guys are going to be looking at an Indian Scout Bobber. What I've heard is that the other bikes like the Chieftain and the Challenger don't have this problem, so I'm not sure why that is. But if you guys are interested in getting a Scout of any kind, I believe the same problem happens with the 60s and the regular Scouts and then the Bobbers. It's definitely something to be aware of, so keep that in mind. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys like the content, go ahead and subscribe. We got videos that come out every week, normally on Monday or Tuesday. So keep an eye out for that. Go ahead and like the video. If you guys got any questions or concerns, go ahead and leave them in the comments below, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.